So I'm not much of a car guy, in case you didn't know that. Never been my thing. I was actually hanging out with my dad, he's here, and a couple of his buddies, back when I was in high school, and his buddies start telling this story about doing this car stuff. He's like, "Whoa, you remember you were putting in that engine and I was underneath holding it up with my legs and his arms and you're trying to bolt it in before it crushed me to death? Man, that was intense." And I turned to my dad and I said, "Remember I was dropping that motherboard in? I had to wear the anti-static wrist wrap and oh man, that was intense." Like that's more my kind of thing. The first car I ever had, it was in high school, senior year, it was a 1989 Nissan Sentra. It was boxy, it was gray, 2 doors. It was functional, it was not a chick magnet, I want to be clear. And it had an interesting feature in which it would leak an enormous amount, an alarming amount of oil. I would put a quart of oil in to drive somewhere and another quart to drive back. One day, toward the end right after I graduated, I was driving to a buddy's graduation party and a little farther away than I was used to, and all of a sudden I hear this clunk, 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 and the engine shuts down and that car never drove again. That's when I learned that the oil is to lubricate that engine so it doesn't do that, and I lost that car. I never drove again. But I didn't really need a car because the next year I went into Notre Dame as a freshman. And you can't have a car as a freshman, or at least for a semester at Notre Dame. You can't get a parking pass. So, I was fine. You're on campus, you don't really need a car. Made it through freshman year just fine. Sophomore year, I studied abroad in Japan. I didn't take a car with me to Japan. It's no big deal. I came back junior year, and I didn't have a car, but my brother, Brian, was coming in as a freshman. And Brian had a car. Brian suggests to me, pitches me the idea, says, "Hey, what if we register this under your name, and then we can share the car?" Like, yeah. Okay, that makes sense, except I wasn't that excited. The car kind of scared me. You know how you get what you pay for, and in cars, well, Brian paid $50 for this car. He called it the Nugget. It was a black Dodge Lancer. It had so many stickers on it that neither of us had put on there, but we could not get off of the thing. And it had its interesting feature was it had a hole in the floorboards that would splash your feet when you drove through a puddle. It was like a Flintstone car, except you did not want to put your feet down there. It was terrifying. I was scared of the car. It would shake a lot when you drive. I didn't want to drive it, and so I got through junior year just fine. And senior year, I moved off campus. I had an apartment, and of course, I had to go get my own car. So I go and I get this 1986 Honda Civic Wagon. A Wagon is half wagon, half van. Worst of both worlds. It is the ITC of cars. It is technically functional with a few design problems, and nobody would ever build it that way today. Wagon. So I drove the Wagon through my senior year, and it started to develop its interesting feature in which it would shut off while I was driving. So in the middle of the highway, puttering along, and then all of a sudden, and you just have to pull over and try to fiddle with it to get it going again. And it was getting really frustrating because I do not like to be late for work, and miss work for something stupid like a car. And so I was getting really frustrated, and I was already looking forward to, as soon as I graduated, I was going to go out and buy myself a brand new car, something reliable. And that's about when I get the letter from Notre Dame Security Police saying, "Hey, you're not going to graduate this year unless you pay off your parking tickets." Parking. I don't have any parking tickets. What the heck? I call up and I find out. They're from a black Dodge Lancer. It's the Nugget. It's back. I call Brian up, and Brian explains that he apparently had abandoned it in the parking lot, the library lot, for the summer. And then when the school year started again, they start ticketing it every single day. He has now racked up $150 in parking tickets on my name. I said, "Brian, you gotta pay these or I'm not gonna graduate." He says, No, nobody's gotta pay the parking tickets. You just call up NDSB, explain the situation, tell them, "You sold the car, it wasn't even yours, they'll just get rid of them, just talk your way out of it." Whatever. So I call up NDSB, I get on the line with Jeff at a parking. You guys know Jeff? Jeff says, "Yeah, sure, no problem, we'll take the tickets off, no big deal. Just gotta show me the bill of sale." I call Brian and say, "Dude, it didn't work. It's not gonna work, he needs a bill of sale." And Brian says, "You know what, you didn't argue hard enough, it's not my problem, you figure it out." So now, do I forge a document to show to the police? Or do I, now of course I paid the $150, I graduate, and I go out and buy myself a 2003 Honda Civic. It was reliable, it was comfortable, 35 miles a gallon, it was reliable, it was blue, it had a sunroof, it was reliable. Did I say it was reliable? Because that was the important thing here. So I've got this new car, I'm loving it, it's great, and I slap the Wagon into the parking lot with a for sale sign in the back window that says, for sale, $700. And a couple days later, I get a call. It's Brian. Brian says, hey, the Nugget's not working. What do you say you give me the Wagon? Brian, I'm selling the Wagon. He says, yeah, but you're not gonna get $700 for that. I said, that's fine. I wasn't gonna ask you for $700. For you, it's $850. On principle, there's no way that kid's getting my car. Now, my brother David is a little different story. David is the youngest brother. He had just finished his freshman year of college down at Ball State. He's doing telecommunications, and now he's got a job, and he's working at the South Bend Community School Corporation doing computer stuff, hauling equipment, and installing labs and all this stuff, and he's working that 8 to 5 every single day. And he gets this side gig filming B-roll footage for the Elkhart County Fair, which means that he gets done 8 to 5, and now he needs to drive out to Elkhart, half hour away, carry a camera around for 5 or 6 hours, get home at 2 a.m., and then start over the next morning. And he asks, could I borrow the Wagon for the next 2.5 weeks so I could do this job? I said, that's fine. Maybe somebody will buy it, probably not. But he does it. He borrows it, and every morning, 8 o'clock, head to work, get off of work, drive out to Elkhart, film until the wee hours of the morning, come home, and start the whole thing over again. And this goes on for a couple weeks. And then Friday evening, I get off of work, I get home, and I get a phone call. And it's the guy who had hired David. I knew him, and so he calls him and says, have you heard from your brother Dave? I haven't seen him. It's not like him to not show up. It's not like him to not check in. Have you seen him? I said, no. What? Did you call his cell? He said, we don't have his cell number. So I said, all right, let me call him. I called David, and a woman answers. And she says she's from the emergency room at the Elkhart General Hospital. She explains that he fell asleep at the wheel. He crossed the center line, and he hit a semi. She says, after a pause that is almost inexcusable, he's going to be fine, but you need to get down here right away. I get in a new Honda Civic. I drive out to Elkhart as fast as I can. I walk in, and I see David laying there on the table with stitches going into his head, with glass being pulled out of his arms, with bandages wrapping around his ankle. And amazingly, astonishingly, incredibly, he is fine. Just some bumps and bruises, scrapes, cuts, a sprain. He walks out on crutches. 2 days later, he and I make a little pilgrimage out to the junkyard and take the title, because the thing's totaled, of course, and I just need to turn that over, and then it won't charge me for hauling the thing off. Turn over the title, we go to the glove box and get a couple things out, and I snap a few pictures of the car, which I'd like to show you one of those right now. That is the Wagon post-crash. I'm alarmed because I see that car and I don't understand how a human being fits into that space where that steering column is, let alone a human being the size of a Grundy. They said they had to cut the car apart to get him out. And with that, I want to leave you with a few observations. Number one, if your car is leaking oil at an alarming rate, just get it fixed. It's way cheaper than getting a new car. It's more expensive than putting oil in all the time, but it's way cheaper than just getting a new car. Number two, the Wagon is an ugly beast, but it did its job and it saved my brother's life. And third, and possibly most importantly, Brian and David owe me $150 and $700 respectively. But that's okay, because I consider myself incredibly lucky to have two brothers who I love and call my best friends. Thank you.